Let's start the homework questions on section 5.3. And for question number 1, I need to find the slopes of lines that are parallel and perpendicular to the given equation. So for question number 1, the given equation is y equals to 3x, and I need to find the slopes of other lines that will be parallel and perpendicular to this line. Okay, great. So I know the slope for this line is going to be 3, right? So if I want to find the slope of another line that's parallel to y equals to 3x, it must have the same slope. So if it's parallel, the slope will be 3, the same slope. And if I want to find a slope of a line that's perpendicular to this given equation, then I need the negative reciprocal, right? So if the slope is 3, the negative reciprocal of 3 is going to be negative 1 over 3. And that is the slope of the line that's perpendicular to y equals to 3x. Okay, so for question 1b, the equation is now y equals to 2x, and now the slope that's given to me is m equals to negative 2, so the slope is negative 2. And if I want to find a line that's parallel to that, then it must have the same slope, which will be negative 2. And if I want to find a line that's perpendicular to that line, then I need the negative reciprocal of negative 2. So the negative reciprocal of that is going to be positive 1/2. So this will be 1 over 2. Okay, let's move on to question number 1c. And for question number 1c, the slope is negative 2/3, so m equals to negative 2 over 3. If I want to find a line that's parallel to that line, we must have the same slope, which is 2 over 3. And for a line that's perpendicular, then I need the opposite reciprocal, right? So right now this is negative. So if I want the opposite or negative reciprocal, it's going to be positive. And then I just flip the fraction, right? So if I flip that, it'll be positive 3 over 2. Okay, so same idea for letter D. The slope here is 3/5. So a line that's parallel to that will also have a slope of 3/5. And the negative reciprocal of 3/5 is negative, and that'll be 5 over 3. We just flip that fraction, so negative 5 over 3. Okay, let's move on to letter E. Now for letter E, you do have to do a little bit of work here. So let me isolate for this negative 3y, and in order to do that, I take my positive 2x and I move that over, right? So if I move that over, I get negative 2x plus 4. And then on the right-hand side, I have negative 3y. Okay, and then after that, you can divide both sides by negative 3. And if you do that, the negative 3's cancel off, giving you a single y. And then my slope is going to be positive 2/3 x. And then this part here is going to be just negative 4/3. Okay, so my slope is going to be 2/3. So if I want a line that's parallel to that, the slope has to be 2/3. And the negative reciprocal of 2/3 is going to be negative. And then I just flip the fraction, which will be 3 over 2. So negative 3 over 2. Okay, let's move on to letter H. Letter H is a good one because now I have a vertical line. So let me just kind of sketch this for us. So I have x equals to 2. All right, so the question is, what is the slope of this line right here? Well, it's a vertical line, and if I have a vertical line, then the slope of that is undefined or does not exist. So my slope does not exist. Now the negative reciprocal of that is just going to be 0. Okay, so you can think about that visually, right? So if I want a line that's perpendicular to that yellow line, it's just going to be a horizontal line, right? So that right there is a perpendicular line, and the slope of this horizontal line is just going to be 0, right? So that's the relationship between a vertical line in terms of finding a line that's parallel and perpendicular to it, right? So just draw a horizontal line and find the slope of the horizontal line. Okay, now let's move on to letter I here. Similar idea, I have y equals to negative 2. Now graph y equals to negative 2. The graph of y equals to negative 2 is just a horizontal line, and this slope, the slope of any horizontal line, is always going to be 0. Okay, so if you want a line that's parallel to it, like this green line, this line will also have a slope equal to 0. All right, so that one's done. Now if you want a line that's perpendicular to that orange line, then draw a straight vertical line, and there's your perpendicular box. And what's the slope of that blue line? Well, this slope here is a vertical line, so it's undefined, right? There is no slope. So if you want to be perpendicular, that will have an undefined slope. And finally, for letter K, I have the classic question where you have a bunch of fractions. Okay, so the goal is let's isolate for the y variable here. So if I do that, I get 1/3 y, and then I'll move this 1/2 to the other side. So that's going to be negative 1/2. I move it to the other side, and then this 3 over 4x will remain as 3 over 4x like that. Okay, after that, there's a downstairs 3 here, right? So you can multiply everything by positive 3. So I can multiply this side by 3, I can multiply that by 3, and I can multiply this fraction by 3. Now on the right-hand side, this 3, and that 3 will cancel off, so now you're left with just y, right? And then over here on the other side, I would say that 3 times 3 is going to be 9, so 9 over 4x. And then if I multiply this 3 with that 1, I get negative 3 over 2. Okay, so now if I just rearrange this equation right here, if I just slightly rearrange that, this is the same thing as y equals to 9 over 4x minus 3 over 2. So a little bit of algebra there, but the key thing here is that the slope is 9 over 4. And if you want a slope that's parallel to that, then I must have the same slope, which is 9 over 4. And then I also need the negative reciprocal here, so that'll be negative 4 over 9. And that's it for letter 1K. So a little bit of algebra there to get y by itself. Okay, let's move on to question number 2 now. All right, so for question number 2, I need to find the equation of a line in standard form. Now remember, standard form is in this form, ax plus by equals to 0. And that it must pass through the given point and is parallel to the given line. Okay, so it must pass through this point and is parallel to this given line. Okay, let's take a look at this particular question here. Now, if I want to be parallel to this given line, then find the slope here, right? The slope here is going to be 2, right? Now, basically, it must be parallel to that line. So our line will have the exact same slope of 2. And it must go through this point, which is 0, 0. All right, so fair enough. So we need the equation of a line. So let's start off with y minus y1 equals to m bracket x minus x1. This is the point slope formula. And I know what m is, right? M is actually this value right there. So that's going to be 2. And I also know what x1 and y1 are. That's going to be my values right here, right? So if I just erase all this now, this is really your x1, and this is your y1. All right, so if I plug that in, I get y minus 0 equals to 2 bracket x minus 0 over there. All right, so pretty much this 0 is that 0, and this 0 is this 0. All right, and then after that, we just kind of simplify our work here. So y minus 0 is going to be y, and then on the right-hand side, I can distribute that. And if I do that, I get 2x, and then 2x minus 0. Final answer here is y equals to 2x. And in order to change this back into standard form here, ax plus by equals to 0, I can take my y here and bring it over to the other side. All right, so if I do that, there's a 0 here, equals to 2x minus y. And that's my final answer in standard form. Okay, let's move on to letter C here. Okay, so remember, I need to write the equation of a line that is parallel to this, and it also goes through this point right here. So this is like your x1, and this right here is your y1. Okay, now for this line right here, I need to find the slope, right? So let's go ahead and isolate for this negative y. So I get negative y equals 2, and then you take your 3x, and then, actually let me just erase this here. You take your 3x, and you bring it over here. If you do that, you get negative 3x and then plus 6. And then you can divide both sides by negative 1. And if you do that, then this minus sign and that cancels, giving you just a positive y. And then on the right hand side, I have a negative 3 and a negative 1. So negative 3 divided by negative 1 is positive 3, so positive 3x. And then I have a positive and a negative, so positive 6 divided by negative 1 is negative 6. Therefore, my slope of my line is going to be 3. All right, so if I want a line that's parallel to this, it must have the same slope as that line, which is going to be 3. All right, so now we're in pretty good shape here. Let me just erase all this. I know that the slope that I want is going to be positive 3. All right, so in order to write an equation with a slope of positive 3 and goes through these points, I need to write the equation of a line using the point slope form. And after that, we just kind of plug in the numbers. So this 3 goes here. So that's going to be equals to 3 bracket x minus, and then what is x1? x1 is positive 1, so positive 1 there. That's it. That closes the bracket there. And then y minus 3, which is that 3 right there. Okay. Now we're almost done here. What we have to do now here is now we need to distribute this. So 3x and minus 3. So that's going to be 3x minus 3. And this negative 3, if I bring that over, I get positive 3 there. Okay. And then I have a positive y on the left-hand side. So this negative 3 and that positive 3 cancel off. So now you have a positive 3x. And we're almost done here. I just take my y and bring it over. So that'll be 3x minus y equals to 0. And there it is. There's my equation in standard form. Okay, so questions number 2a and 2c, not too bad. Let's move on to letter 2g. I believe this one will take a little bit more work. Okay, so my x1 value is negative 4, and my y1 value is going to be negative 3. Okay, so let's figure out what the slope is of this line right here. Okay, so let me just kind of rewrite that over here because I need a little bit of space to kind of write out all the numbers here. All right, what I would do first is I would actually move this negative 2 over. So if I move this over here, I get x plus 2 equals to 3 over 4y. All right, after that, there's a downstairs 4. And how do you get rid of a downstairs number? Well, you multiply everything by that downstairs number. So I can multiply this by 4, multiply that by 4, and multiply this by 4. Okay, so 4 times x is going to be 4x plus, what's 4 times 2? That's going to be 8 equals 2. And then this 4 and that 4 cancels off, giving me a 3y. All right, after that, how do you get rid of this positive 3? Well, you can divide both sides by positive 3, right? So divide that by 3, divide that by 3, and divide that by 3. And if you do that, then those 3's will cancel off. And now you have a y on the right-hand side. Over here, this is just really 4/3, and then the x variable, plus 8 over 3. Now if you want, I always rearrange this, and I always put the y variable on the left-hand side, and you can just keep everything else the same. So 4/3 x, and then plus 8 over 3. All right, so as you can see, the slope of this line is 4/3, right? So we did all that work to find the slope, and we did find that the slope has to be 4/3 to be parallel to that line. All right, let's go back to the top now. Let me erase all this. All right, so I know the slope is going to be 4/3. Okay, now what we have to do next is we need to write the equation of a line that has a slope of 4/3 and passes through the point -4, -3. In order to do that, I will write the equation of a line, which is y minus y1 equals to m bracket x minus x1. Okay, I know the value of m is 4/3, so 4 over 3 bracket x, and then what's the value of x1? All right, the value of x1 is going to be -4, right? So this will be plus 4, and then close that bracket. And then what's the value of y1? Well, the value of y1 is -3, so this will now be y plus 3. Okay, so let me just erase this. Let me erase that. Now, in order to change this to the standard form, there's a few ways you can do this. You can distribute the 4/3 onto the brackets. So if you want to take this 4/3, you can definitely rainbow it, but there's some other methods that you can definitely try as well. Let me try this method for this particular video guide. I noticed that my downstairs number is a 3. Okay, so one thing that you have to be very comfortable with in math is getting rid of fractions. So you can always multiply by the number on the denominator to get rid of your fraction. So my bottom number is a 3, right? So let's multiply everything by a 3. So multiply that by a 3, multiply that by a 3, multiply that by a 3, and then we're good. So 3 times y is going to be 3y, plus 3 times 3 is going to be 9, equals 2. And then this 3 and that 3 will cancel off, giving you just a 4, and then bracket x plus 4. Okay. So now the denominator is gone, right? So you don't have any more fractions in your problem anymore, and sometimes that's really nice because now you can work with just easy numbers here. So let's just distribute this. If I distribute that, I get 4x plus 16, and over here I get 3y plus 9. All right, so now let's get the x's and y's on one side, and then we'll get the numbers on the other side. All right, so how do I get this 3y to the other side, and how do I get this 16 to the other side? All right, very simple. You just move the 16 over here, and you move the 3y over here. If you do that, the 3y, since it's positive right now, if I move it to the other side, it'll become negative, so negative 3y. And then I have my 9 on the left-hand side. If I move the positive 16 over, I get negative 16 on the left-hand side. So you can do all that in one step. And then you have your 4x minus 3y. And what is 9 minus 16? That's going to be negative 7. So there you go. There's your final answer. And sometimes you can also write this as 4x minus 3y equals to negative 7. That's the same thing. Right? So don't be worried if you have to flip the order, right? So it's still mathematically the same thing. Okay, great. That's it for question number 2, and then we will now move on to question number 3, I guess. Now for question number 3, I just want to note out. I just want to make a simple note that this is pretty much the same kind of question. You know, same point, same equation, but this time it has to be perpendicular, right? Okay, so if I want to be perpendicular to this line, I know that the current slope is going to be 2, right? So if I want the line that's perpendicular to that, then the slope has to be the negative reciprocal, which is negative 1/2. Okay, that's really important. So now our slope is going to be negative 1/2, and our x1 value here is going to be 0, and our y1 value is also going to be 0. All right, so very similar problem, we're just changing the slope. All right, so let's go ahead and write out the point slope form of a line. Okay, so there you go. So the m here is now going to be negative 1/2, and this is going to be x minus 0, and then over here I have y minus 0. So this is looking pretty good. Now, just like the previous question that I did, I want to change this to standard form, and what we're going to do for this video guide is we're going to get rid of the fraction by looking at the denominator there, and we're going to multiply everything by that denominator. So right now our denominator is 2, so we're going to multiply everything on the left-hand side by 2. Let's put a 2 there, and let's go ahead and do the math here. So 2 times y is going to be 2y, and then 2 times 0 is going to be 0, so 2y minus 0 equals. And then this 2 and that 2 will cancel, giving you just a negative 1, right? So a negative 1 bracket x minus 0. Okay. Now on the left-hand side, 2y minus 0, well, that's just simply going to be 2y. And then let's distribute this. Negative 1 times x is going to be negative x, and negative 1 times negative 0 is going to be 0. So 2y equals to negative x. Okay. Let's bring the negative x over to make it positive now. So if I bring this over, that becomes positive x plus 2y equals to 0. And there it is. There is the equation of my line in standard form. Okay, let's move on to letter number C. Okay, so for letter C, I definitely know that from the previous question, from question 2C, we did the algebra on this, and I believe from question 2C, we found out that the slope of that line was equal to 3. So if it's parallel, the slope is going to be 3. If I want the perpendicular slope, it's going to be the negative reciprocal. So now the slope is going to be negative 1/3. All right, so there's my new slope, and I'm using my results from question number 2C to get to my perpendicular slope. And then I also know that my x1 value is 1, and my y1 value here is also going to be 3. Okay, so let's go ahead and find the equation of a line with the x1 and y1 value and the perpendicular slope of negative 1/3. All right, so we'll start off by writing the equation of a line in point slope form. All right, and let's go ahead and plug in the numbers here. So m has a value of negative 1/3, so negative 1/3, and then x minus, well, what's the value of x1? Well, the value of x1 is going to be positive 1, so minus 1. close the bracket, and then on the left hand side I have y minus the value of y1, and the value of y1 is going to be 3, so 3. Okay, so there it is. There's my equation so far, and now I need to change this into standard form. So step number 1, I notice that my denominator is a 3, so for this homework video guide I'm going to clean this up by timesing everything by that denominator. And let's simplify. What is 3 times y? 3y. What's 3 times 3? 9. So minus 9 equals 2. Now, gotta be careful here. This 3 and that 3 will cancel off, giving you just a negative 1. So negative 1 here, and then bracket x minus 1. All right, after that, we can distribute this. If I do that, I get negative x plus 1. And on the left-hand side, I have 3y minus 9. All right, now the goal is I want to get the x's and y's all on one side, so I'll move this to the left-hand side, but I'll also move this to the right-hand side at the same time. So if I move this negative x over, I get positive x, and then plus 3y, equals 2. Then I have a 1 here and a positive 9. All right, so we're almost done here. I have x plus 3y on the left-hand side, and 1 plus 9 is going to be 10. And there it is. There is my final answer for that particular problem. Okay, let's move on to question number 3G here. And I also know from question 2G that the slope of this line that we found, I believe, was it 4/3? Yeah, so the slope here was going to be 4/3 from question 2G. Now, if I want the perpendicular slope, it's got to be the negative reciprocal, which is going to be negative 3 over 4. And I know that my x1 value is going to be negative 4, and my y1 value is going to be negative 3. All right, so the next step is write the equation in point-slope form. All right. What's the value of m? The value of m is going to be negative 3 over 4. And then x, and then it's negative x1, and there's a negative 4, so that's going to be positive 4. So x plus 4. And on the left-hand side, I have negative. And then there's a negative y, and my negative y, there's a negative y1 value, and my y1 value is going to be negative 3, so this will be positive 3. Okay. And after we have all that, our goal now is to change this into standard form. And for this homework video guide, the way I'm kind of tackling these kind of problems is by timesing everything by the denominator here, which is 4. So 4 times y, 4 times 3, 4 times negative 3 over 4. And if I do the math here, 4 times y is going to be 4y, plus 4 times 3 is going to be 12, and then equals. And you got to be careful with this next step here, right? Because this purple 4 and that downstairs 4, that cancels off, giving you just a negative 3. And then you have your x plus 4 over here. All right, let's erase that. And now let's go ahead and distribute this. So if I distribute that, I get negative 3x minus 12. And I have a 4y here and a plus 12 over there. All right, and we're almost done here. Our goal is we want all the x's on one side, so I'll circle that and I'll circle that. So I want the x's and y's, the variables, on one side. If I move the negative 3x over, it becomes positive 3x, and then positive 4y equals to negative 12. And then if I bring that over, that becomes negative 12 as well. All right, so almost done here. So I have 3x plus 4y equals to negative 24. Okay. All right, we're almost done this homework video guide. I just have to do questions 4a and 5a. So for question 4a, I need to determine the equation of a line that's parallel to the graph, and it's also going through this particular point. So very similar question to question 2a. The only thing that you have to do is that you have to recognize that this is your x1 and this is your y1. And what you need to do is you need to find the slope of this line, right? So now they're giving us a graph. So here's a good point and there's a good point. If I draw a triangle that has a height of 2 and the base is going to be 3, right? So the slope here is going to be 2/3. All right, so I want to determine the equation of a line that's parallel to this line, In order to do that, then we know that the slope that's parallel to that is going to be the same thing, which is 2/3, right? So our goal is to find the equation of a line with a slope of 2/3, and it goes through this particular point, which is 4, -2. All right, and we also have to write this in standard form. All right, so very similar problem. So let's go ahead and write down y minus y1 equals to m bracket x minus x1. All right, the slope is 2/3. X minus x1, so my x1 value is going to be negative, is going to be +4, so that would mean I write it as -4 here. Close the bracket, and then I have a y minus y1, so my y1 value here is negative, right? So that's going to be +2. All right, so now we have this classical case, and I recommend that you highlight the denominator and you multiply everything by that denominator, right? So 3 times y, 3 times 2, 2/3 times 3. All right, so 3 times y is going to be 3y plus, and then 3 times 2 is going to be 6. And then those 3's will cancel off, giving you just the 2. So 2 bracket x minus 4. And then after that, you just distribute. And then on the right hand side, I get 2x minus 8. And then I have a 3y plus 6. Okay. I would just move this around here. So if I do move this around, let's see, I can move the 3y to the other side, and I can also move this -8 to the other side, right? So let's move this -8 over here, and let's move the 3y over here, and then we should be done, right? So this would be 6 plus 8 equals to 2x minus 3y. And finally, I have 14 equals to 2x minus 3y. This right here is your final answer, and you should be done with that. Okay, let's go ahead and let's move on to the final question. Okay, so I have 5a. So for 5a, same question as 4a. The only difference is that I want a line that's perpendicular, right? So the graph is the same, the point is the same. Now from 4a, I know that the slope that's parallel, it was equal to 2/3, right? If I want the perpendicular slope, then I need the negative reciprocal, which is going to be -3/2. So pretty much the same question as 4a, we're just using a slope of -3/2 so that we have a line that's perpendicular to that graph line. All right, so once again, we write the equation of a line in point-slope form. So most students are getting tired of writing this all the time. And we fill in the m value, the x1 value, and the y1 value. All right, so our x1 value is 4, our y1 value is going to be -2, right? So this will be y plus 2 equals to -3/2, and then this will be x minus 4. All right, so the last thing we have to do here is we need to write this in standard form. My denominator is 2, so let's multiply everything by 2, right? So multiply that by 2, multiply that by 2, multiply that by 2. 2 times y is 2y plus 2 times 2 is going to be 4 equals 2. Those 2's will cancel off, giving me a -3, and then bracket x minus 4. All right, so once again, that -3 survives. And after that, we can just distribute this. So we get -3x, and then plus 12, and I get a 2y plus 4. All right, almost done here. I will circle this -3x, and I'll bring it over. And if I do that, I get a -3x. Sorry, positive 3x. Positive 3x, and then positive 2y. And then this positive 4, let's bring that over. And if I do that, I get 12, and then minus the 4. Hopefully that's okay, right? If I bring the positive 4, this positive 4, right? If I bring that over to the right-hand side, it should become -4, right? So final steps, 3x plus 2y, and 12 minus 4 is going to be 8. So there's your final answer for that particular problem.